Hello, everybody, and welcome to the finale of the second season of Literature Berks. My name is Amanda Hornberger. I'm the co-chair of Literature Berks, and on behalf of our entire committee, I'm thrilled to welcome you to the final program of this series. Literature Berks is a community-wide celebration of books and authors presented by the Jewish Federation of Reading Berks in partnership with Exeter Community Library and the Jewish Book Council. In the chat, you'll see a link to purchase a copy of the Farberge Secret through our official book vendor Reads and Company bookshop. Literature Berks is happy to have supported a local independent bookstore this past year, and we continue to encourage you to shop local during this time. Remember that books always make great gifts. Throughout the event, feel free to type any questions you may have into the chat or the Q&A function, and we will do our best to answer questions throughout the program. Charles Belfoure is a New York Times bestselling author of The Paris Architect and House of Thieves. An architect by profession, he graduated from the Pratt Institute and Columbia University, and he taught at Pratt as well as the Goucher College in Baltimore, Maryland. His area of specialty is historic preservation, and he has published several architectural histories, one of which won a Graham Foundation National Grant for Architectural Research. He has been a freelance writer for the Baltimore Sun and the New York Times. I'm honored to welcome Charles to Literature Berks.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. I'll start by just telling you how I got it, came about writing the Farberge Secret. I wanted to write a book with the same kind of theme that I had in The Paris Architect, where a man discovers this injustice and he has to make a decision whether he just stands by and ignores it or tries to get involved and to do something about it. And so I started fishing around for an idea, and I came across an interesting article saying that most Jews that live in America today, their ancestors came from Tsarist Russia, to escape, and they came to America to escape the oppression, the anti-Semitism, the violence. And that really interested me. And when I got into the research on it, I learned about the Pale of Settlement where Jews were supposed to live, and also about the violence that occurred against them, and the pogroms. And I realized that you really don't hear much about pogroms anymore, even though there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them from like 1880 until the First World War, and even maybe afterwards. So I did the research, reading eyewitness accounts and what happened, and it really interested me, because you hear so much about the Holocaust. You never hear anything about these pogroms. And in a way, these pogroms are more directly connected to Jews living in the United States than the Holocaust. And because I think 2 million Jews, Russian Jews, and Jews from Poland, which Poland was part of Russia at that time, they came to America. But you never hear anything about the pogroms or this passage here. It's all Holocaust. It gets all the publicity. So I did the research into it and discovered this incredible brutality, that there would be a riot and people would go into the Jewish quarter and beat and murder and loot and burn. It was just absolute chaos. And the government, the Russian government, didn't really care. And so the police didn't care. They would always think that the Tsar, in my case, in the plot of my book, is Nicholas II, who's the last Tsar. He condoned this violence. And so I got an idea of making the main character an aristocrat, a prince of the imperial court, and a friend of Nicholas II. And he just inadvertently comes across the carnage of the first really famous pogrom, it's 1903 Easter Sunday pogrom in Kishinev in the southwestern part of Russia. This was the first pogrom that got international attention. And even Theodore Roosevelt was outraged about it. And so, and it was from this Easter Sunday pogrom that the prince and Prince Dmitri, he becomes more aware of the violence and the oppression of Jews and also of peasants. Russia was a peasant country. 90% of the inhabitants were peasants. And so they lived in terrible conditions and in filth. And, you know, and even the workers worked in factories that were unsafe and dirty. And he was appalled by all this. He gets involved with a Russian doctor, a woman who discovers that her great-great-grandfather had converted to Christianity from Judaism for business reasons. And she becomes interested in her Jewish roots, and she's outraged about the way that they're treated. So both together, they decide to join the revolution. And so, Dmitri is very guilt-ridden about this because, number one, he's going against his friend, Nicholas II. And Nicholas II feels the Jews have it coming. You know, they brought this all on themselves. And, Dmitri knows this isn't true. And he also, so he feels like he's a traitor to his friends, Alexandra as well. And also a traitor to his class. You know, the aristocracy doesn't give a damn about peasants or Jews. And they never get involved. And so he has to make this tough decision. And it becomes even tougher when Nicholas and Alexandra finally have a male heir, to the throne, but it's discovered quite quickly that he has hemophilia, and it really destroys the lives of Nicholas and Alexandra. I mean, they're totally consumed about their son's illness, which there's no cure at all. He just, faints away, when the pain becomes too great. And, but the slightest fall or anything can start this internal bleeding. And so Dmitri is very guilt-ridden about joining the revolution. But in the end, he joins the revolution because he feels that that's the thing that he has to do. He feels he can't stand by. So I just wrote this story. I was interested in Nicholas and Alexandra. They were really unusual people. And so that's why I put Dmitri in the imperial household. And, I have descriptions of the court, the Farberge eggs, which are important. The Farberge eggs were housed in a display room in a palace. And so Dmitri is using them as a little mailbox to place messages to other agents who are in the palace, because it was a great this conspiracy to overthrow the government. Now, there were two types of revolutionaries: the ones that wanted to use violence and kill the Tsar and his family, and then the others who just wanted to do a political change where they had a parliament and everything. But it's just whether a man stands by or not, so I enjoy, whenever I do historical fiction, I have to really like the period. And so I was interested in Nicholas and Alexandra. They were very, very unique couple. And so I did all the research on it. And so I just wrote the book. I had, going back when I wrote my first book, I had no creative writing experience at all. I was just an architect. And so I had a hard time selling the first book because there was like a recession, and also no one wanted to give me a chance because, I didn't have a degree in writing or literature or anything like that. So, I enjoy the writing because it takes me away from being an architect, which is quite stressful. There's a lot of responsibility. So if anyone is interested, when you start the questions about, writing or the publishing business, I can answer from my own experience. But I'd be interested in hearing about, whether the listeners heard anything about pogroms when they were growing up, or what characters they liked in it and in the book. So I'm ready for questions.
All right, so if you have a question, you can either use the raise hand function, use chat, use Q&A. We can also unmute you. I have a couple just to get us started. You said you did a lot of research. What kind of research did you do? Reading other historical documents or novels?
Well, there was one main book, I think it was written by a guy named Robert Massey about Nicholas and Alexandra. And the reason that he wrote the book, he got interested in the book, that his kid had hemophilia. And then he found out, about Nicholas and Alexandra, and he got interested in it. And they were both kind of sharing the same agony. Because by the time, when he wrote the book, this biography of Nicholas and Alexandra, there still hadn't been a cure for hemophilia. And so I would read history books. I would read memoirs like of the nannies that worked, in the Imperial Russian court. I would read about everyday life in Russia, what they ate and, what life was like just for, for peasants or, an emerging middle class. And then I would read a whole lot of things about pogroms and anti-Semitism and eyewitness accounts. And you'd go back and look at papers, describing what was going on from 1903 to 1905. So that's initially how I did the research.
Sue has a question. She asks, what historical information surprised you when you researched for the book?
After the first after this pogrom, there was a Russia and the Tsarist government had no problem with the Jews leaving. They sort of encouraged it in a way. And a lot of Jews had no intention of leaving Russia. And it wasn't because they were Jewish. They felt that they were Russian. And their nationalistic attitudes and their patriotism came way ahead of being Jewish. And so they said that they were born in Russia, and they would die here. They weren't going to be moved out. So that was very surprising, is that the religious aspect of it wasn't that important to a great deal of people. They had been in Russia for generations. And so they really were proud of being Russian. And so the biggest surprise was that for these people, their religion was very secondary to this whole thing. And so there was really no place for Jews to go. I mean, they could immigrate to America, and in Palestine, the Ottoman Empire controlled that. And they'd only let just a very few Jewish settlers in at that time. So really it was America that some went to Argentina, but that didn't seem to work out very well. And, but yeah, Jews, it's almost like when Hitler turned against German Jews in the 1930s, a lot of Jews were outraged because they were German and they felt they were Germans first and they had fought in the war and they were very patriotic. And, you know, they were so insulted in being treated this way when they had served their country, and they were very proud of Germany. So there was some, you know, connection between the reactions between Russians and what happened in the 1930s. So, but that was the most interesting thing I found.
We have a question about the Fabergé eggs. What led to your interest in them?
Well, I live in Baltimore, and one of the museums has one of the eggs. And when you see the thing really close up, it's the craftsmanship and detail, especially because it's so tiny. It's just extraordinary. And I was very interested in them. And I did the research on them. You know, an Easter egg would be given to the Tsar's wife and his mother each Christmas, and Fabergé would work on it for the whole year. Fabergé himself, he didn't actually, you know, make the egg. He would come up with the concept for the egg. You know, like there was one that you'd open it up. It always had a surprise in it. You would open the egg up and it would be a surprise. So for instance, there might be a replica of the Imperial yacht or something. One had, that's extraordinary, one had a wind up a train of, you know, a Trans-Siberian train that could, you know, be wound up, and then you would link all the cars together and it would go around. But it was just extraordinary that when you looked at the detailing, the miniatures of these things, how absolutely correct they are. And they used them, you know, gold and diamonds, and you know, no expense was spared. So it was
What size are they typically?
Pardon?
What are the size of the eggs usually?
They're probably more, I think none of them are taller than 5 inches high. Wow. And so, you know, they would be eggs, some laid on their side. And amazingly, most of them, I think there are just 2 or 3 that have vanished. And in fact, one guy, this is maybe 10 years ago, he found one at a yard sale. And you know, he paid nothing for it, and it turned out to be worth millions of dollars. You know, but most of them had been kept by the communists. And also the founder of Forbes magazine, he was a big collector of them. And so the Forbes family has a great many of the eggs.
That was our next question that came into the chat, that the eggs were in Russia on limited display. Where are they now? So some of them are still in Russia. The Forbes family has some. There's a which museum in Baltimore has some? Yeah,
the Walters Art Museum has one, and then you know, some of them are in private hands. Some of them had vanished, and but the Russians in their state museums, they have a good number of them too. So when they overthrew the Tsar, you know, they kept a lot of the stuff, jewels and everything, because they knew that they would need money. They would need hard currency, and that they could sell this stuff. And so they didn't, you know, destroy, you know, every possession of the imperial family. So, but the eggs somehow survived. I think a couple of them were smuggled out of Russia during the Communist Revolution. So only a couple are missing.
That's amazing. How many total were made? Do we know?
I think there were 27. I'm not sure, but I forgot. But most of them are, you know, either in museums or private hands. 1 or 2 of them, the surprise inside is missing, but they have the documentation or some early photograph what it was. So extraordinary craftsmanship.
Yes, we have a question. How did you go from being an architect to a writer?
First, I wrote architectural history stuff. I lived in Baltimore, and no one had done a book on row houses, anywhere, like in America. So I started writing one, and then I partnered with a scholar who had done some research on it, through land records, and we stuck with it and got the book published. And then I did a few more books on different topics like bank architecture, and then specific topics like for Baltimore. And then I just decided that I would try fiction, because you could just make all this stuff up out of your head, and you didn't have to do this tiresome footnoting or do a bibliography at the end. I mean, you still have to do some research, but then what would happen is that you do the research and you can twist it and do it whatever, however you want. And so it seemed pretty easy. So you would just sit, and you have a premise, and then you would just, build on it. And I didn't outline or do anything like that. I would just just start writing, and sometimes a lot, sometimes I'd put it away for a while. And so I had a manuscript, and then I didn't know anybody in publishing. I didn't know any writers or anything. So I needed someone to look at it. So I got someone from the Iowa Writers Workshop to look at it and to edit it, and to tell me whether it's publishable. And they helped me with it, and I did more work on it. And then I went and I got a literary agent in New York, and she took it on, and I had to do more work on it, and then finally it was ready to go out. And this was in the recession, and so I had a dozen rejections, and so before I hit with a small publisher. And so and to my amazement, the thing sold. And then I just kept doing it. And then the other thing is, I didn't really understand the business. Is that I mean, like, if you're a movie producer and you have a great success with a Western, you would do another Western, instead of something set in China or something like that. And so that's the way it works, but most writers want to write what they want to write. And so I wrote House of Thieves because I was interested in New York City's Gilded Age. And then I would just try things, and but that's how I got into writing. It was just an offshoot of writing nonfiction, and I enjoyed doing that. I'd never really written anything. I never even wanted to be a writer when I was young, and so when I was in graduate school at Columbia, I wrote a thesis, and the thesis advisor said, well, this is really good. This is really entertaining, because most of these theses are boring as hell, and so, and he said that, you should, try, writing. And then I decided that I would write a book on row houses. So that's how it came about.
Do you have a preference now between do you still do nonfiction writing? Or you purely
I haven't done. I'm still looking for some idea that would really inspire me, because then you would write a history, but it would sort of almost read like a novel. It would be really interesting, instead of all these dry facts, that these academics, put into the thing. And because that's what I tried to do with the Baltimore row house. And so it just wasn't a litany of facts. So I'm still looking out for something like that. So I mean, people always like crime, always looking for like some true crime murder or something that no one knows anything about. So I'll probably will do something like that.
We have a question from Paul asking about Dmitri. Was he based on a real person, perhaps the Russian architect Alexander Krakowski?
No, I just made him up. I just made him up. I knew about, Russian architects of that period. I just made him up, and he was different because he was an aristocrat. And most of these people, all they do is party and sleep with each other's wives, and drink and go hunting and spend their time in the south of France. And I wanted Dmitri to actually know how to do something. Like his father didn't want him to be some, wastrel, some a person who had no direction in life. So I wanted him to be this kind of unique aristocrat who actually knew how to do something.
That makes sense. I realize I put it in the wrong chat. I'm putting a link in to purchase a copy of the book if you haven't read it already. We have another question. Do you still work as an architect?
Yeah, I'm finishing up a town hall that I'm restoring and renovating. And then I have a mill from the 1790s, the ones that ground wheat into flour.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know if this one will go through, but it's a woman's insane asylum, and from 1912. And so I have to see whether that goes anywhere. These projects take up so much money. They're really expensive. And you have this whole set of buildings, from an insane asylum. And so you have to decide what you want to do with them. Do you want to make them into office space or restaurants or have apartments in them? And so it takes millions and millions of dollars, to raise to do this. So lots of times I have projects and they just can't put the money together, to make it happen, because it's just difficult, to convert these historic buildings into a new use. So that's all I have to do now. So
that makes sense. No, we had another question of how do you write? So do you actually plot now? I know you said for your first book you didn't really do an outline or anything. And then do you type on a computer, or do you write longhand?
I type on a computer, and so the very important thing is to have a good chapter to beginning chapter to start off with, and it sort of gives you momentum. And so I found that to be true. So once I have that, I can start writing about it. And so I'm writing now about an architect who becomes a terrorist, and so I can write in the present, so. But you still have to do research, like what kinds of guns that they use, and what the Taliban wear, and what motorcycles they like to drive, and that kind of thing. But it's set in today, so I'll just start. I've started writing, and I'll just add to it, and then I'll go on a streak, when I write a whole lot, and then I won't write that much at all. So and then when I finish, I'll show it to my literary agent, and so they're always saying what will sell, not whether it's good or not. so it's all a business.
How long does it typically take for you to write one of your novels?
Oh, it'd probably be like 9 months to a year, and that's just doing it off and on. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, maybe, maybe 9 months, to do, a very rough draft of it. And so, and then, to go back to it. And then there's always uh, the editing, and the revisions that I have to do. That adds like another 6 months to it too.
Yeah, we've heard from a lot of authors this year that the editing process can take a really long time.
Yeah, and, they have lists, things that you have to change, and uh, sometimes it's very small things, and it doesn't really change the plot or anything. I always have trouble with relationships, love interest between a man and a woman. So in my terrorist novel, I don't have any kind of love interest. I don't even have any girls in it. And so I can eliminate that, because they'll say, they'll say, I didn't feel that, I wasn't convinced, by the relationship between, this guy and this girl here, or it takes them too long, to fall in love. And, so, that's plagued me in all these books. So,
So you're just eliminating that possibility.
yeah, so I don't have to deal with it, because, you're just looking at, uh, violence, and spies and things like that.
Somebody wants to know, have you ever gone to Russia to see things in person? The book was so visual.
Yeah, I've been there, and, like when I wrote a book set in London or Paris, this is a long time ago, but yeah, but you can visualize it better, So, but my next novel, the terrorist novel, is set in Uzbekistan, which is north of Afghanistan. It's in Central Asia there, near Kazakhstan, all the
All
countries
the
that have
stands. Yeah. Are you going to go? Are you going to make a trip?
No. People say that it's really nice to go there. It's not dangerous to go there.
Yeah.
And it has all these beautiful mosques, and most of the country is like just desert and rugged country. And so I don't know. I'll have to see. But yeah, you go on YouTube and you find all these people that are traveling there and saying what a great place it is. And, I don't know. It would be interesting to go to a place like that.
It would be so different.
Yeah.
Nancy wants to know, what type of books and authors do you like to read, and what are you reading now?
I read mostly history, and I read very little fiction, and so I'll read a history of, like, the creation of India, or I'm reading a book called the Empress of Maladies. It's a history of cancer, and so that's what I'm reading right now.
Great. Does anybody else have other questions for Charles before we wrap up? What would you say is your favorite historical time period to write about? You've written about a couple different periods.
I guess it would be the Gilded Age in New York City, the 1880s to 1900. That would be my favorite. And so I would, yeah, I would do another book set in that period.
I'm going to put the link in the chat one more time to purchase a copy of the Farberge Secret. Thank you, Charles, so much for joining us. We had a great time having you with us tonight. Thank you, everybody, for supporting Literature Berks this season. Information about the third season will come out later this summer. Take care and stay well.